Christa Gurka. Christa owns, operates, and teaches at Pilates in the Grove, which serves the Coconut Grove and South Miami communities with 2 premier South Florida locations. Her studios literally set the benchmark in Pilates instruction and physical therapy interventions, with most of the instructors holding advanced degrees and boasting well-rounded backgrounds in physical therapy, occupational therapy, dance movement therapy, and nutrition. Christa's contagious energy and palpable passion have earned her a clientele of both local fitness enthusiasts and high-profile athletes, including Miami Heat coach Eric Spoelstra, WNBA veteran Ruth Riley, pro volleyball player Kelly Schumacher, and pro golfers Christy Kerr and Natalie Golbis, among others who rely on their performance, health, and appearance to succeed in their careers. And outside the studio, Christa is a wife and a mom to 2 boys. She donates her time and talent to a number of nonprofit groups, and she provides Pilates-based strength and training programs and injury programs to elementary schools around our community. So please give a hand for Christa. Next to Christa is my dear friend Jessica Goldman Srebnick. Jessica has been the CEO of Goldman Properties since 2012. She oversees the company's portfolio of assets in New York, Philadelphia, Miami Beach, and we're calling it Miami's emerging Wynwood District. I think emerging is that's way past emerging. The company includes a mix of hotels, restaurants, office buildings, commercial, retail, residential properties, large-scale public art projects. If you've ever been to the Dolphin Stadium, you've seen her work there from Goldman Global. The projects include the Wynwood Walls and the highly acclaimed outdoor street museum, Wynwood Walls, and also the Bowery Wall in Houston in New York City. I looked up, I was researching my friend Jessica, which it's always nice when you learn something about someone that you know. I found an article about her from Forbes magazine, and the title of the article is, I'm just gonna read it because I thought this is a better introduction than anything I could say. The title of the article is Icons of Impact, a Real Estate Wonder Woman and the Power of Street Art. And it's by a guy who writes about impact investing and the humans who power it. This is his quote, Brendan Doherty. This Wonder Woman of real estate hails from an entrepreneurial family that helped emerging neighborhoods transform through art and commerce over 50 years. She shows that family businesses aren't unchanging or stodgy. They can be major agents of change. From Wynwood to Wall Street, Jessica Goldman Srebnick, CEO of Goldman Properties, combines visionary thinking, an ethic of hard work, and surprise input from artists like Banksy to create vibrant communities in an ever-changing real estate landscape. Very well said. So please give a round of applause for Jessica Goldman Srebnick. And finally have this guy, Bast Amron, who I met, thankfully, about 10 years ago. We met, maybe a year before we formed the firm. Brett is the best partner a guy could ever ask for. He makes me a better man and a better leader and a better lawyer on a daily basis. I'm proud to have my name attached to his. He's also, by the way, I forgot to mention about Jessica. She has 3 amazing young boys who I love dearly, and they're very close friends with my friends. I'm about to start talking about Brett's kids. Brett's 3 kids. Is Brett's wife still here, Lauren? Okay, she had. So Brett is the father of 3 children. He's a devoted husband. He's a conscientious business partner. He's a mentor and a friend to many people in the room. He's an exercise fanatic. He's also happens to be a great attorney. He's been recognized by Chambers and Martindale Hubbell and South Florida Legal Guide and South Florida Florida Super Lawyers and U.S. News and World Report Best Lawyers in America. I probably missed some. And Brett, I'm going to give you this. Brett does not believe in work-life balance. Instead, he thinks your occupation should exist in harmony with your personal life. It's not a balance. This perspective is something he's going to be sharing with us today. And as I mentioned earlier, I know we've had some people in the audience coming and going. Brett, in about an hour, will be boarding a plane to fly to New York to run the New York City Marathon on Sunday. all for charity, where he's raised almost $5,000. And Brett's 3 children are amazing kids that are also close friends with my children as well. And so I'm also proud to say that our sons are the 2 percussionists at their school, and so we've had Bast Amron duets at Ransom Everglades as well. So I'm so proud to be a part of this panel. I'm going to start off by asking each of you to tell us a little bit about what your business looked like, what your family looked like when you started your business.
Are they on? Are they on? Yeah? Okay. I started my business in 2008. I had, my 2 boys were 5 and 2. So one was in school, one was in preschool. And it really kind of started more as like a little side hustle, to be honest. I didn't think this would take off to the trajectory that it happened to do. I think my boys are, 15 and 12 now, and luckily everything's still going great.
And Brett, tell us.
So, there we go. So when I started my firm before Jeff and I got together in 2008, I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. I now have a 15, 12, and 8-year-old. And so life was pretty crazy. And I remember at the time having a conversation with my wife, who, God bless her. We wanted to have a third, and I said, "Will you give me a year?" When I was leaving and starting a business, and she said, "I give you a year." And lo and behold, 2 years later, we had our beautiful daughter.
You're crazy. All of you guys are crazy for starting businesses with kids. Jessica, you had the unique perspective of growing up. So you have the child's perspective of growing up in a family of entrepreneurs. Can you tell us if you've learned any lessons from that?
So our company was started before I was born. We're actually celebrating our 50-year anniversary on December 1st of this year. So I would say, thank you. So I would say I joined our family business when I was born, right? But I actually joined from a working perspective when I was 27. I had graduated from Boston University, got a degree in psychology, figured I would go out in the world and work for 1 year and go back to school. And instead I went into the executive training program at Saks Fifth Avenue. I worked there for a year, an amazing experience as a young woman to work with a lot of really strong women. And I was kind of debating about going back to school because I believe that really great leaders are really great learners and people that are curious. And so I love studying, I love learning. And I was applying to business school. My mom said, "You should go to the Tony Goldman School of Business." Tony was my dad. There was no Tony Goldman School of Business. And so I decided, I like you and your wife, I said to my dad, I said, "I'm going to give you 1 year. 1 year contract. Put me through all the different parts of our business, and let's see if I feel like I can contribute in a way that I'd like to stay." And it gave me a bit of an out to say, like, because family business is complex and complicated, and I loved my relationship with my dad, but I didn't want that to change because there was a working relationship. And so I've worked now for our family for 21 years, and I became the CEO of our company when I was 6 years ago, when my dad passed away, and I had we talked about, I have 3 boys, and at the time they were 5, 7, and 9. So you can imagine, 5, 7, and 9, all boys. Is that in itself is a handful, but then to take on kind of the sole responsibility of a pretty large company and to lose your dad all at the same time was pretty earth-shattering.
All 3 of you took on this immense challenge at a time when your children were very young. I mean, isn't that kind of stupid? Honestly, that's a risky move. How'd you feel about taking that risk? I'm gonna just kind of open it up and let you guys jump in. And by the way, if anyone has questions or comments, please, we want this to be interactive.
I more looked at it like I wanted more out of my career, and I wanted to show my boys at the time that I could be equally successful in our household, and I had an internal desire to be something a little bit bigger than what I was currently doing. As I mentioned, I did not think that the trajectory of my business was going to go where it took me, which I've been very fortunate about. But I just kind of felt like this was something I really, wanted to do. I didn't think of it as much of a risk as the thought of leaving a stable paycheck was a little bit of a concern initially. But my husband's always been incredibly supportive, and he said to me one day, he's like, sometimes you just got to bet on yourself, and it turned out it was a good bet. So.
Yeah, so same sort of thing. I decided that I felt like in order to get where I wanted to go, it was the right time. Maybe not necessarily from having 2 little kids. If I really sat back and thought about it, maybe I'd say, boy, that was stupid. But I didn't really see an option at that point. And so maybe it gave me the motivation to not accept any failure and to just work hard and to continue to drive forward. I too had a very understanding and supportive spouse at the time, and supportive family. And so I just put nose to the grind and just went forward. And I guess the thought of potentially failing and the fear of that is what really motivated me to make sure that my family had and move forward.
I think when you grow up in a family business, it's always about business. So we talk about business at the dinner table. We talk about business going to school. We talk about, it's on the weekends, it's at night. And when it's your own business, it's kind of 24/7. But the thing I learned the most was about work ethic and about commitment. And I think that, that's what I try to instill and teach in my children. And it's one thing to tell someone to be a certain way. It's another thing to show them by your own actions. And then, and my kids, as Jeff knows, my kids are really hardworking and really diligent, and I think that's because they see that they have a father and a mother that are also really hardworking and incredibly committed to always making sure that whatever work product we put out is top quality work product, and it's also about choices, right? So when you have your own business, you can make choices. You can choose to go to your kid's football game. You can choose to work on a Saturday or not work on a Saturday. And so, I think all of those things kind of create this well-rounded experience for, the parent and for the child. And, my dad put me to work when I was 12. He said, come up with a business plan, show me your business plan, and then we're going to see whether or not you can run that business. And I did when I was 12, and I did the same thing for my 10-year-old when he wanted a pet. I said, okay.
Wait, sorry.
Okay.
Can you tell them what kind of pet it was? This is a pretty special kid. They're all amazing children, but
so he wanted a sturgeon farm. Yeah. So because he tasted caviar once and he flipped out, and he wanted to raise sturgeon so that he could at some point sell caviar. Okay, very entrepreneurial, very cool, but he wanted it in the backyard. We have a nice house, but I don't know if we can have a sturgeon farm. So I said, okay, why don't you, instead of saying no and shooting him down and telling him that was not a great idea, I said, why don't you do the research? Why don't you find out where do you buy the sturgeon, how long they take to develop, where, do you need a license to sell sturgeon? How big of a tank do you need? How do you maintain the tank? What are you going to do when you're in summer camp for 2 months? And and who's going to feed the sturgeon? And he literally created an entire business plan. It was amazing. And at the end of the day, he figured out what the profits would be, what the costs would be, all of those things. And at the end of the day, I said, okay, you're ready to present to me and Daddy. And so he did. He presented to me and Dad. And at the end of the presentation, he said, it takes 4 years for the sturgeon to mature, and I think I'd rather have a bird. So I got out of the sturgeon farm.
They have a parrot farm at their house now.
Yeah, right.
No, it sounds like each of you has, in your own way, turned it into not as a negative having a business, but in a positive, and using it as a vehicle for parenting. Can you tell us? I know this is a question that's off script; it's just come up. So, can you tell us how you've done ways in which you've used your business as a teaching tool?
Yeah, sure. I think it was either Jessica or Christa referred to it, but showing your children how hard it is and how hard you have to work in order to be successful. Talking to them about, the fact that you own a business and that, you can be away from the business, but are you really ever away from the business? And learning, to turn it off and talking to them about it, because, when your kids are little and they say, well, you own it, so you don't have to be there, and but they, so you have to tell them, well, okay, I may be able to go to your football, soccer, basketball game, but I'm going to go home now, and when you go to sleep, I'm going to go to bed, I'm going to go to work, or in the office at home, or on a Saturday or a Sunday, or if we have trials, which take us away from our families for a week, 2 weeks at a time, and just having an open line of communication. And teaching them that hard work pays off. And one of the things I always stress with my kids is, when we learned this at an EO conference, that I don't know what percentage of jobs today are going to be obsolete by the time your kids graduate and graduate college. So the one thing I always teach them that you can't take away and you can never take away from them is work ethic. And so you can always learn a trade or change gears to what you want to do, what you want to grow up to be. But you always have that work ethic, and that can never be taken away from you. And so that's one of the things that I hope I show them, and I also talk to them a lot about.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I also set the tone in our house that you can choose to do and be whatever you would like to be. So maybe being an entrepreneur or business owner is not in line for one of my children. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Whatever they choose to do in life is what they can be successful at. And I think that we talk about things that it takes no talent to work hard. It takes no talent to hustle. It takes no talent to be coachable. It takes no talent to show up, right? And smile and listen. So you have some of those skill sets and you can be very successful in whatever it is you choose to be, whether that be a business owner. And I think when I was growing up, I actually thought, to be perfectly honest, I thought if you were, at the top of, if you owned a business, you had no time for anything else. And what I'm trying to teach my children is that you can have both. And you can be at your kids' events, so if that's what you choose to do. So they have an opportunity to see that you can have a successful career as well as have a successful family life.
So, as a kid, my parents always spoke to us like we were people. So anytime there was a question, it wasn't, oh, you're only 10, you don't know what you're talking about. It was, let's hear what you have to say. And I think that was like a really profound thing for me, because it didn't matter whether I was a man or a woman. It didn't matter whether I was the daughter or the son. It was, you have an opinion, you have a voice, and I care about what you have to say. And so I think that I've carried that through. And I have a brother, and, and I'm the CEO of the company. And so, because, I was trained, and I was trained to do the job and do whatever it took to do that job. And it didn't matter what my last name was. I mean, sure, that's a benefit, but I always tell my children, be known for your first name and not your last name. And I always think that that's really important, and I always stress that a lot. And so, like, for me, I use my passion and my experience to share with them. And to your point, let them choose what it is they wish to be passionate about. But as an example, when I was 17, my dad sent me to bartending school and put me to work as a bartender in one of our restaurants. I was the coat check girl. I was the when they had coat check girls. I was the cashier in one of our restaurants. I mean, I was put to work. I put my kids to work in our we have a restaurant called Wynwood Kitchen and Bar. We have a restaurant called Joey's. I put them to work in the restaurants. I let them roll up their sleeves and see what it's like to be on your feet and to, not easy, really not easy. And I talked to them about the challenges of business. I talked to them as much about the failures and the challenges and the struggles as the successes. And so, one of my wonderful greatest moments, amongst many, was I was in the car and I was on the phone and I had one of my kids in the back seat, my middle child, and I was so excited because I just closed a really, really big deal, a lease in one of our Soho properties, and it was with Jimmy Choo. And for women, Jimmy Choo is like, for me, it's a shoe manufacturer, and I would have given it up for free for all free shoes forever. But my husband said that would not be a good idea. And anyway, so I just closed this deal and I was on the phone. I was so excited and I hang up the phone. And my kid, who at the time, he must have been 12, said, well, what rent are they paying per square foot? And I said, $500 a square foot. He goes, well, how big is the space? And I told him how big the space was. He says, how long is the lease? And I'm sitting there and I literally cannot believe that this child